Emily and I just played Life in Reterra. This is the latest game from Eric Lang, and Ken Gruhl is his co-designer, and this is from Hasbro. And if you're looking for Blood Rage or Rising Sun, this is not that. This is sort of an experiment on Eric's part. He wanted to make a game for maybe the next generation of enthusiast gamers. That's not to say that this is an enthusiast game. This is a very sort of entry-level game. I would imagine if you're a family looking for a game and none of you are into gaming yet, but you're like, your kids are of that age, this might be the ticket.
For sure. So we'll give you a preview, a little bit of how the game is played, what you're doing in it, who we think it's for, who it's not for. And if you like this content, make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel to see everything we have coming up.
Yes, we have it set up right here. This is not to play. This is a game having just been played. So at the beginning of the game, you won't have your whole tableau here. You'll just have this one little tile here that says Life in Reterra. And then this is the main board. The main board is going to look different depending on how you set it up. We had these buildings, actually not this one, but we had these buildings right here. These are going to be part of the variable setup. There are 3 little trays like this, all with cards, double-sided mind you, that have different buildings. These all associate with these tiles that are out there because these are going to be tiles that you add to your world potentially. And in the game, you're going to be using these tiles to build that world, making a variety of different terrains.
Yep.
Hopefully putting some gears down, and then if you put gears down in the right configuration, adding these buildings, which is where a lot of, not all of, but a lot of the scoring comes into play.
For sure. So on your turn, it's very simple though. You're just going to play one tile and put it into your tableau, and then all you have to do is it has to be adjacent to something you've already played. You're not going to be stacking things in weird ways or anything, but they also don't have to be like, water doesn't have to be next to a water. It could be whatever you want. With the thing in mind that you said that if I can ever get 2 tiles that are the same type that both have gears next to each other, when I place the second one, I can choose to take from the board one of the buildings and put it on top of that. The buildings, like you said, can do things like giving me additional points at the end of the game, or they can do things where it gives me like an ability that I get to do every turn. For example, this farm says every time you place an inhabitant, place a junk token on a relic of one of your neighbor's communities.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of take that. Now the good news is, like we said, it's a variable setup, so you don't have to use the take that, but in that case, you're going to take one of these little tokens and you're going to place it on a relic in someone's world. The relics are just another way that you're going to be able to score points at the end of the game, and some of the other buildings might actually give you even more points for having relics of a certain type or in certain configurations or what have you. But, like we said, if you played this game once, and it must be said it's a very fast game, and there are people at the table who are like, that I did not like the take that, then just take that card out and put a new building in here. Like I said, those other trays have different cards, double-sided, and even different building tiles. So if you use a different sort of card, you might have to replace these buildings. But there's a really interesting flow to the game. Like Emily said, you place one of those tiles, you might place a building, and then it's the next player's turn. You're going to go around and around until you have a 4x4 tableau. It has to be within that format. It's always going to be 4 high and 4 wide. The game's going to end once everyone at the table has that built.
Yep. There are a few ways to score. Like we said, the buildings have different scoring conditions. We can also, if you didn't want to place a building in your turn, you can place an inhabitant. Each of those are worth 1 point. The relics are each worth 1 point, which are on a lot of the different tiles that we have in our thing. And then if you ever get a terrain that has 7 or more spaces in it, it's going to be 3 points.
Just 3 points. It is going to be difficult to get many more than, say, 3 of those different terrains with 7 or more.
It's like you have a 4x4 space to use. So there is a limit to how much you can do, and some of the cards or some of the buildings that come out are going to want you to have a larger segment. Like we played with the garden, that was worth 2 additional points if you have the largest segment of continuous terrain. So I was trying to get big areas for the 3 points, but also trying to get a huge area so that maybe my gardens would be worth even something more.
Yeah, I will say, whenever you're trying to get one big area for something like that, it is very challenging to also get 7s on some of the other ones.
Yes.
But we both managed to get 3.
Yes.
We also both managed to get 2 energy sources. These are unique tiles that come out during the game, and the way these will always score is if you have one, it's 8 points, but it has to be completely surrounded by land. So you can have them on the edge of your board, but they won't count for points in that case. So we were both we had intent to make those. As soon as I saw that Emily had 2 of them, I was like, well, I better get one. And then I got another, thankfully.
Very intentional community building.
Yes, for sure. But this game is going to, like we said, go on and on until everyone has that tableau, and then you score up those basic points, which are going to be the same for every game, and then again you look at all of these buildings and see how they score. Now, I would recommend, particularly if you're playing this with newer players, you're going to want to go over these in great detail before everyone starts playing, obviously, to know how some of them score, and also how some of them impact the game while you play it. Now, on a just played like this, we always talk about who the game is for and who it's not for. I'll start with who I think this is for. We've already touched on this a little bit. I think this is for that sort of entry-level family, in particular, that's looking for a game, even whether or not you've played games before, because I think this is simple enough. The rule book, in fact, is very easy to follow. They don't get down in the weeds too much.
Sure.
I do think some enthusiast gamers might look at this and go, I wish they got down in the weeds a little bit more. But I think someone new to gaming is going to be able to get through these rules. They're very visual and play this game. It's also going to be very quick.
Yes.
Like I said earlier, even the take that is not going to sting too much because it's so quick, and then you can reset and take that out. So I definitely think what Eric is trying to do with this game and try to bring a game that brings a little bit more meat, not a terrible amount, but a little bit more meat to an entry-level game that you're going to find at Target and at Walmart and things like that. I think it does that very well, and that's definitely who I think it's for.
Yeah, I mean, there's a decent amount of decision making, and the variability I think is huge too. How you can play different games with it for the type of game it is. I would say who it's not for, though, would be maybe your like enthusiast gamers.
Yeah.
If you have a whole group of your hobby gamers playing every single week, this probably won't make it to the table very often.
Yeah,
maybe once or twice.
In terms of Eric Lang fans, if you're a fan of Blood Rage, probably not for you. This is a different sort of game. So if you are just playing with enthusiast gamers, maybe a little light, but if you are an enthusiast gamer out there and you want to know a little bit more, I'll put it in terms you understand. This game, I think, definitely gives off some King Domino vibes. I also think, again, and while it's not exactly like that game or exactly like Cascadia, I would also say Cascadia is another game that feels like it has similar things going on.
Yeah.
I would say weight-wise, I'd put it somewhere between those games. It's probably a little bit more meat than King Domino and a little less than Cascadia, or a little less thinky than Cascadia.
Less thinky, for
What
sure.
this does bring in spades, like Emily said, is the variability. We haven't even scratched the surface on all these cards because they come in sets, and you can use one side of all these or the other side. You can use the same for all these other sets, or you can start mixing and matching, flipping cards and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, putting out different tiles. I mean, you could probably have some really nasty games.
Sure.
They even in the rule book have some like predetermined sets that say, want to be at each other's throats?
Yeah.
Try this one.
It reminds me of like Dominion, where you had like the predetermined sets of like, you want this type of game, play with these. You want this type of game, play with these. And I think that's a pretty cool thing to get into, especially if you're not into board games and you're like, oh wow, this one game can do a lot of different things.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It offers, I think, just this much more than most of the games in the mass market sort of world do. And I think if Eric was setting out to find next generations of enthusiast gamers, this is exactly the kind of game that I think, you get this in the hands of a kid or a family, you're going to have a family that might graduate and keep graduating and continue playing games.
And we keep saying family, but to be clear, I don't have kids, so I think my closer is like if it's just a group of non-hobby gamers, right?
True.
They're going to a game shop for the first time, or they're going somewhere and they're like, I don't want to read a 10-page rule book where it's like super detailed and has 50 examples of everything. I just want to be able to quickly get through it and get into the game. This is more their speed.
Last thing I want to say is the production value here. This is, if you like a nicely produced game, I don't know what the MSRP is on this thing. If it's going to be in the mass markets, I can't imagine it's going to be more than 30-something.
Sure.
It's really well produced. It's got these really nice trays with these tiles after you punch it. There's some spot gloss on all of the tiles. All of these tiles actually came pre-punched, which I always find, as a board gamer.
They're little things that board gamers love.
I wouldn't have minded punching it. I love punching a game. But when you open it and there's a little plastic tray and it's already filled with tiles, King Domino, I think, did that same thing.
Yeah.
Or there's been other games like that where I'm like, oh, that's kind of a nice surprise. It's already done.
For sure.
So if you like a nice production level, this does do that as well. But if you have any other questions at all about it, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer whatever we can. Also, get on our Discord. I'll post some more pictures if we didn't put them in this video of some of the components so you can take a look there. and we'll continue the conversation there even more so. Until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.